Hello and welcome to Seconds Out Live. The big fight weeks just keep on coming, and there's no one I would rather spend this hour or so with than Mr. Ayman Khan. Ayman, how you doing?
You couldn't think of one other person in the whole entire world. If you got one wish, Danny, it would be me.
Come on.
What a lovely sentiment there, Danny. You know what? I echo it too. Good to also have the audience in here as well to run through what's going to be a mammoth. It's really felt like the momentum has just kept on going off the back of Fury Usyk, and Taylor Catterall maybe felt like for some it might have just dipped down a little bit, but the fight delivered as well too. And this 5v5 has a lot as well at stake for both promoters. Can't wait to chop it all up.
Yeah, we are going to be talking about Taylor Catterall towards the end of the show, but as you can imagine, we're really gearing up for the big Frank Warren versus Eddie Hearn 5 versus 5 event taking place this Saturday in Riyadh. I know we lost Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterviev's fight. Bivol's still on the card, but Beterviev injured. And that was a huge disappointment, but now more focus shifts to this team concept. And there's so many permutations. One that I didn't even know about that Ayman mentioned to me off air just before we started, in that you get 2 points for a win if it's by knockout or stoppage rather than just 1 point for a decision victory. And I had no idea about this. And now I'm not sure if the winner I thought I had already has now changed. So we're going to go through that when we get to our predictions and so on. But please do. We are the most interactive show on boxing YouTube here at SO Live. So please do give us a thumbs up. Please do give us a subscribe if you haven't already. And perhaps more importantly, give us your questions and your comments in the live chat, and we will read out as many as we can. And before we get into the big 5 versus 5, I will have a quick fly through the chat and see what we've got going on. So we've got Das Chef Anthony. It says Eddie Hearn to win 3-2. He also adds it's the final countdown, which was a great hair rock song from Europe, I seem to remember. James Foskett says up the tune. Not really sure what that's got to do with anything, even football at the moment, because they had kind of a mediocre season, I think it's fair to say. But yeah, we'll come back to the chat when there's maybe a bit more going on. Come on, guys, get your questions and comments in. But yeah, so for anyone who's been living under a rock for quite some time, this Saturday, June the 1st in Riyadh, the ongoing Riyadh season, following hot on the heels from the undisputed fight Fury against Usyk, we've now got this 5 versus 5 team concept. Basically, Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn picked a selection, a quintet each, if you like, of fighters to take each other on. 2 heavyweight fights, 1 light heavy, 1 middle, 1 feather. And then overall winner will be crowned, we hope. I mean, a draw is possible. I don't know if there's been any, circumstances where a draw will be decided, what, toss of a coin perhaps, or some sort of weird box off, maybe a Royal Rumble type event. But we know that it's 2 points for a knockout or stoppage win, 1 point for a decision win. And the captain of each team, and that's Hamza Shiraz for Frank Warren and Deontay Wilder for Eddie Hearn, the captain, if they win, will get double points. So just to be clear about that, so if a captain gets a knockout win, and for Wilder, you'd say that's his best chance of victory, that's 4 points. Mm-hmm. Wow. So yeah, a lot at stake, bragging rights most of all. But what I like most about this concept is that all 5 fights really mean something in their respective divisions in their own right as well. It's not just about the promoters bragging rights. And let's be honest, how much do the fighters really care about the pride of their promoters? As close as they might be, as much as their promoter may have done for them in the past, they care about their own careers. Boxing, we're always told, is a selfish sport, and there's a lot on the line in each individual fight, and we will go through them all. But Ayman, first of all, what do you make of the concept? We're always looking for new ideas, new concepts in boxing. What do you make of it? And I think they've, from a British perspective, probably picked the right set of rivals to start with.
Yeah, well, it depends really how you want to look at it. From the point of view of a consumer specifically, I mean, I don't really get how it resonates specifically with maybe casual boxing fans to the greatest degree. Who really is Team Matchroom versus who really is Team Queensberry? I don't really see that. I think boxing fans are just boxing fans, opposed to being, I'm an Eddie Hearn fan, so I'm just going to watch a Matchroom boxing show as opposed to a Queensberry show. You know, I don't see at these events people turn up in Matchroom boxing t-shirts or Queensberry promotion t-shirts, let alone boxing that even, I don't know, a Craig Richards t-shirt, just because that's the way boxing is sometimes, but even more so, specifically of the promoter. That's another thing as well too, where it comes down to as to, is this actually being overshadowed away from the boxers actually having the fights, as opposed to, it seems to a greater degree that it is a thing of Hearn versus Warren, and I get that being a selling tool for things, and that adds that little bit more. That's not something that would be overlooked if this was a WWE or anything like that. So I completely get that. But these are 5 fighters who are pulling it on the line, putting their health on the line. So maybe to a little bit of a degree, that's being lost in it as well. And I think as well, maybe it might be a little bit fair to say as well too that if this was a couple of years back, the original 5v5, from what I can remember, was probably a better 5 versus 5, or maybe slightly. No, maybe not. Maybe, thinking that thing, I'll probably take that back. Actually, I think this is probably a little bit better than the 5v5 that was originally pitched. But back then, it might have had a bit more momentum as a whole concept. But I still think this does, off the back of what we've had recently with Fury versus Usyk, is a great event and great card as well too. I think they've delivered, and it's a bit of a shame. Well, actually, I suppose it kind of shows too as well just how big it is when Bivol and Beterbiev was a slight bit of an afterthought as well too. When it came down to it, people were discussing the card, especially Wilder versus Zhang, especially the heavyweights in Daniel Dubois and Filip Hrgovic, that undisputed light heavyweight crown was going to be decided on this card, and that was being not as discussed as much. So maybe it's a blessing in a way that Bivol and Beterbiev will square off later in the year and have their own spotlight away from the 5v5. But look, a lot to look forward to. Some good, interesting fights, and when you look at it as a card too, this might be one of the most complete cards there has been in a long time, because when what's likely to be Craig Richards versus Willie Hutchinson as your opener, maybe it might be Ford versus Ball as your opening fight. That's a huge fight to open up your card in comparison to what the standard fare is when you get a prospect versus someone that a showcase fight. Don't want to name any names or go too far with it. When it's a showcase fight and you know what's going to happen, compared to now where it's really a fight where there's actually stakes on there, it gives you an idea of how good the card is. So I think in prospect, real good occasion to look forward to.
Now we're going to get the poll out nice and early, as has become the pattern in recent weeks. And basically we want to know who wins this 5 versus 5 inaugural event between Frank Warren's Queensberry Promotions and Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing. You're going to have to do your permutations, your calculations, back of a fag packet or vape box or whatever. We want to keep our references modern where possible. Work it out. It's 2 points for a knockout win, 1 point for a decision win. Captains, that's Wilder on one side, Shiraz on the other. They're not fighting each other, although they're probably a similar height. Work out who gets the total points based on your predictions and let us know. Or don't do any of that and just, do it off the top of your head. Warren wins. I love Warren. I love Hearn. We're not that bothered, but just tell us in the poll, Hearn victory, Warren victory, or a draw. Because with all these, different ways of getting points and doubling your points and so on, a draw can't be ruled out. And as we noted at the start, we don't know if there's any sort of decision on who gets the spoils or the bragging rights, or if there even is a trophy. I'm sure Maurizio Suleiman's been breaking his neck or breaking the necks of his workers in the WBC factory, wherever that is, to make a special commemorative belt just for this occasion. So we'll look forward to seeing what that looks like as we get closer to the weekend. Just kidding, Maurizio. If you're watching, we still want to be invited to your sumptuous lunches that you put on when you're in London. But yeah, let's go to the chat. Let's see if that's livened up a bit since we started the show. Oh, yeah, there's plenty here now. James Foskett says he's loving the channel. James, we love you too, mate. Only because you've said that. If you turn against us, well, we'll be the same. KB says the next event will be the UK versus the USA. Well, I've seen some stuff online about a potential USA versus Mexico 5v5, so we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. Simon Stevens says, which fight do you think will be the standout fight? Wilder versus Zhang, a KO who for? That's the question. Keep up the good work. So, Ayman, I'll ask you in a minute. For me, I would say that Nick Ball, Ray Ford will probably be the fight of the night, just because I expect styles to mesh incredibly well, and they're both very talented fighters. With maybe Hamza Shiraz, Ammo Williams being a close second. What do you think, Ayman? What's the fight you're most looking forward to?
Yeah, well, it would be the heavyweights that takes the cake in terms of most looking forward to. That'd be Wilder versus Zhang and Dubois Hrgovic. Maybe more so Dubois Hrgovic, because here at Seconds Out we've got a good relationship with Don Charles as well too. So we'll see a keen interest in that one. But for me, the fight that I think that will deliver the most excitement was definitely Hamza Shiraz versus Amma Williams. Both fighters don't really look to take a backward step and looking to seek for that knockout. And I think that's the type of fight where there could be multiple knockdowns for in a case of where both of them have to get up off the canvas if they're looking to seek the victory. So a lot on the line there for both fighters who are really looking to prove something. And I think that for me will end up being the fight that will really steal the show.
Thunder Road says, chat, hit the thumbs up. I can only endorse what Thunder Road has said. He's now worked out that we start at 4 o'clock UK time, which is nice. Bogdan Dinu, fact Hearn can sign Wilder just for this event takes away from the rivalry angle. Would only really work if both fighters also had a rivalry, like AJ versus Fury or Yard versus Buatsi, when JB was still with Hearn. KB says, which Wilder will show up? The wild one hoping for a body on his record, or the peaceful ayahuasca Wilder. Thunder Road, not only did Hearn sign Wilder, he made him captain as well. Pretty lame. I mean, we'll get to the predictions in a bit, but I think it might be a bit of a misstep from Hearn as well, making Wilder the captain, but we'll get to that. Who else? KB, which Wilder will show up? Oh, no, he's already said that. Pay Style says Triple D will be truly tested. Now, I can hear a lot of noise going on in the background, and that can only mean one thing. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a bit of a treat for you on this week's edition of SO Live. In fact, making his SO Live debut, they say video killed the radio star, but in this case, video kind of made the radio star. We are delighted to be joined by the main man himself, Radio Rahim, live via satellite or something similar from Riyadh. Rahim, how's it all going over there?
It's already kicked off. It's not quite as much pandemonium as it was for the undisputed first day kickoff. No one's gotten headbutted. I've seen no blood spilled just yet.
You've been behaving yourself.
Everybody, well, when I say nobody, I mean nobody that we can talk about. No, but jokes aside, the fighters are all very ready. They seem especially intense for this one. They're taking the Matchroom versus Queensberry bit of it quite seriously. They all want to be the one to make a statement on Saturday night and be the standout fight. I don't think that there is, obviously the heavyweights, there's always a special attraction, and we've got two big punchers that's going to get a lot of attention. But as the matchups go, I think it's anybody's guess which matchup we'll be talking about on Sunday morning as having stolen the show. And I think every fighter on the card wants to be that guy. So we might be looking at a really solid night of boxing, maybe even like harkening back to the Fury and Ngannou undercard, which I thought was the strongest card in Saudi so far. Hopefully we get something along those lines again.
And Rahim, you've been doing interviews throughout the day, of course, out there in Riyadh with all the main fighters on the card. Now, we know that those interviews are embargoed as they are for all the outlets until tomorrow, so please tune in to Seconds Out and watch those. But has anyone in particular impressed you or surprised you with their general demeanor, their enthusiasm? Anyone taken you aback?
I'd say Ammo Williams, who is formerly Ammo Williams and now the Tiger King. I'll let you see what that is in reference to after the embargo. I don't know that I can say more, but that's an interesting one to tune in for. And then always one of my favorite interviews is going to be Malik Scott. Like, he's such a solid teacher of the sport of and the science of boxing that I enjoy having a conversation with him. He's candid. He is honest. He is realistic about his fighter, while in full support, obviously, of Deontay Wilder being victorious on Saturday night. He is one of the few that really break it down in every element: the mental game, the physical game, the need for certain types of skills, and then the need to let your hands go, which may have been an issue for Deontay last time out, and get out of your head and just do what you do. So I would say that those two were particularly interesting conversations. But to be honest, everybody who stepped in front of the camera today had a message and was dialed in and wanted to be here and wanted to talk about what they intended to do on the show come Saturday. So there's not a single interview worth missing.
Very good point. We'll go to the chat in just a minute, but one thing I did want to ask you, Rahim, you know Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren pretty well by this point. You've been in Frank Warren's box, of course. I haven't, unfortunately, as yet. But just tell us, from your experience talking to them in recent times, how invested are they in this rivalry and in winning this 5 versus 5?
Well, for clarity's sake, I've been to the football with him at his suite. I've never been in Frank Warren's box. So, that said, I think they are both very much seeing this as a point of pride, as a long-standing rivalry that will get settled to some degree come Saturday night. And I don't know that there's ever been a string of fights that they've each respectively more wanted to win than the 5 coming up on Saturday. And in regard to that, I think it's important to mention that on this show, because it is not only 5 individual fights that are all, really good matchups, but also there's a team element to it, which we almost never see in boxing except in the Olympic style amateur boxing. But as pros, this is just simply not a team sport. We'll have the advantage of looking at the statistics produced by Jabber, which we also saw on TNT Sports Box Office for Undisputed. We'll have those available for the 5v5 matchup between Queensberry and Matchroom. And that's going to be a really interesting panel of analytics and punch stats to not just talk about who won each individual fight in the sense of how you might score a round if you had the factual ability to analyze each round based on accurate statistics, but there's also an overall kind of card you can make for just like team statistics and team analytics and which team collectively you think did better. Obviously, these are going to not be officially implemented into the scoring, but as far as bragging rights go, as far as social media goes and talking points, I think you're going to have some really interesting added elements to how you could view and digest what happened Saturday night.
All right, well, I'm just going to whip over to the chat. I imagine there'll be some questions for Radio Rahim as well as the rest of us. So let's have a look. Mr. S says Rahim looks like he's at a movie premiere. Well, it's almost as good, isn't it? Let's be honest. Maybe more so. Gary says,
well, we are,
right, Radio Rahim will be gone.
Well, we are sat in a theater. I think everything in Riyadh, especially around events this big, is somewhat decadent. So this is not the folding chairs ballroom at the crummy hotel that some might be used to. These are very plush, reclining seats, nonetheless. Let me just give you a little taste of what's possible when you're in the right. Oh man, I'll show you this way.
You get some serious envy now.
Look at that, baby! Come on now, come on. It's the first time I've ever been able to recline at a press event in style. So yeah, you're not wrong. That's one of the benefits of being in Riyadh. They hold nothing back. If it makes it more decadent, if it makes it a bigger show, they're interested in doing just that. So it's a swell time. It's hard to stay awake in this seat, to be honest. Like I want to take a nap between shows.
Please do for the next 5 minutes at least. Gary says Radio Rahim will be staking his territorial claim and lining up first for interviews for sure. Good lad. Gary, if you think that Radio Rahim has to queue up behind the hoi polloi, behind the minions sent by other outlets, you're out of your mind. Radio Rahim is the first name on the team sheet at all these events. Thunder Road says Rahim living the life in the 4 seasons in Riyadh. I mean, you've just seen a taste of it there, Thunder Road. Mr.
Well,
S.
it's only 1 season in Riyadh right now, and it is summer. Let me explain to you all. Like, we are inside, air conditioned, and quite looked after, but outside there, it's boiling. And I expect on Saturday night, that's the only thing that's going to be hotter in Riyadh than the weather is going to be the firefight between all of these boxers. So yes, indeed, it is Riyadh season, but it's becoming a year-round event. I think Riyadh season in the sense that now it's the first time I've been here in June, first time I've experienced this kind of heat in the weather. But to be fair, it's also the first time I've experienced this kind of heat on a card where everybody not only wants to win for themselves, but oddly wants to win for the other guy on his team. That's unique, and I think that's going to create a unique atmosphere and experience come Saturday night.
Let's see who else we've got. Thunder Road says, come on, Rahim. No pause was needed there. We knew Danny was talking about Frank's box at the Emirates. I was. Frank's huge, inviting, welcoming box at the Emirates.
Oh, we out of the room.
A Styles says Triple D will beat Jared Anderson.
Oh, okay.
Gary says, can I ask how long do you have to line up for a famous Eddie Hearn interview? Good lad.
All right. We just got some
Radio
private
Rahim
thing
doesn't
happening.
line up, Gary. I think we've already pointed that out. Eddie Hearn queues up for Radio Rahim. That's how it works. Ask him. Jack87 says, does anyone else think ammo is a pound shop Wilder? Now, Rahim, you might not have pound stores over in the US. You have thrift stores. It's not too dissimilar. But basically, Jack87 is saying, do we think Ammo Williams is a lesser version, but style-wise similar to Deontay Wilder?
I mean, listen, the truth is, like, who could be similar to Deontay Wilder, who hasn't knocked out 98% of their opponents? Like, no.
Radio Rahim is frozen. I thought it was hot in Riyadh. Seems to have gone ice cold. Ayman, what's your Radio Rahim impression like?
It's pretty terrible, but I'll fill in whilst Rahim's away. No, I agree with the sentiments that he was making there. That I've had the pleasure actually of watching, at least from memory, once Ammo Williams and then multiple times of Hamza Shiraz. Hamza specifically multiple times throughout his career since he was a teenager into boxing. He's really kind of matured and really kind of become an adult in front of boxing fans' eyes who followed his career. But specifically for Ammo Williams, he was on the undercard of the Conor Benn versus Pete Dobson fight recently in Las Vegas, which I covered. And Ammo, to me, looked really, really good. He looked like a fighter who, he might get a bit more traction in terms of the way he he's not just the big power punches. It's the boxing that sets up those finishes, especially looking to set up and slow down his opponents to the body. And there's a lot of body to aim for Hamza Shiraz. It's a real pick and fight for me there. And specifically with the decision to make Hamza Shiraz captain from have that really the win in tatters there, because you lose your double points there. So I think that's a real risky decision there by Frank Warren. He's made the most of his captaincy pick in terms of, Frank Warren likes a punt, and he took a punt specifically, as Hamza Shiraz will mention, and you'll hear in the interview with Frank with tomorrow. He wants to repay the faith from Frank Warren, but understands it was a punt, but he's been guided, as Frank Warren does, his prospects to these positions. Now he's got to repay and deliver, but it's a tough fight for him to deliver against in the form of a really, really good boxer and puncher in Ammo Williams.
So Radio Rahim has texted me and said he's trying to get back in. I think Eddie Hearn's coming to the front of the queue to speak to him. So we'll see if he makes it. As Lisa Stansfield once sang, I don't think he's coming back. And that's a deep cut for you. And I'm immediately proved wrong, because he is back with us now. You should have heard what Ayman was saying about you while you weren't here, Rahim. It was awful stuff. We had to bleep him a couple of times.
Oh, because he said I'm the baddest MFer around?
Yeah. I mean, you're half right. No, but seriously, we're just about to get into our predictions, and I don't know if this is something you're going to want to get involved in, because you're out there in Riyadh. So if you pick against someone, they can be pissed off face to face with you, whereas we're safe in our remote status over here. But we're going to start going through the card kind of fight by fight, and I think we'll go from the bottom in terms of lightest weights to the top, and then we end with the heavyweights. But one of the fights that I've said to Ayman before you joined us could be the fight of the night is Ray Ford against Nick Ball. Nick Ball's never in a bad fight, always exciting because of his pressure style. And then you've got Ray Ford, very slick, but won his world title in incredibly dramatic fashion with that last round stoppage against Kolmatov. What do you make of it? If you don't want to give a prediction, that's fine. Ayman and I will stick our heads above the parapet. But what do you make of it?
I'd say that both of these guys having quite a bit to prove. First, Ford being the world champion, thinking if he'll admit that he's levels above Ball, and Ball feeling like he was denied a world championship that he earned last time out, and wants to prove that he is of world champion caliber and should have a strap around his waist. Is going to make for two guys who feel like they have the punching power to knock the other one out, and don't maybe respect as much the other one's skill as they should. So it'll be interesting to me to see who edges it, in the sense that they have other tools to rely on outside of their power and grit, and find ways to be clever in there and set traps, that'll be the fighter that wins on the night. The fighter who's smarter in there. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be the most technically proficient, but you know what adjustments to make in the moments and when to, go on with your shield and when to maybe take a step back for the betterment of winning the round. It's going to be difficult for, I think, either one of these guys to take a step back because of their pride and their real belief that one punch can get them out of the ring with a strap over their heads at any moment. It's hard to then be disciplined in box when you think every punch can knock the other guy out. So I think whoever is smart enough and has the discipline of his emotions and his ego in check to make the right move at the right time will be the one who will be victorious on the night.
Rahim has set the scene there. So, Ayman, it's now down to you and I to make those all-important predictions. I'm going to let you go first. Maybe I'll go first in the next one, and we'll alternate it. But who do you think is going to come out on top? And by what method, as we now know, that's quite important in terms of the points.
Yeah, sure. I actually think that this battle will be won and lost on Friday night. The scales are a real important factor for this fight. Ray Ford was kind of honest in revealing the truth about his career decision. He wanted to step up the weights potentially after defeating Kolmotov. A real attritional fight there for him, where if he didn't get that stoppage in the last couple of seconds of the fight, then he was losing that fight to Kolmotov. But it was a brilliant win for him. But I wonder how much juice, or life, I should say is a better word, left at the weight. Now, it's a thing right now that whilst it's great and the fights are happening over in Saudi Arabia, the flip side of it is that fighters are risking more their weight and, the potential to maybe lose it because the money is so great at the weight and the money's there for him. So he's decided to stay here. Can Nick Ball capitalize upon that? I feel that Ray Ford probably, even with that said, might be have the favor here because he's seen styles like Nick Ball before and been able to handle that. That'll kind of play into his hand. So I think it's all to lose from a Ray Ford perspective. So for me, the edge goes towards Ray Ford in this fight. I think he wins on points with some hairy moments in the fight.
So that's 1 point for Eddie Hearn on Ayman's scorecard. I'm going for Nick Ball to grind out a late stoppage. I think he will be of the mindset that he doesn't want to be denied as he was against Ray Vargas. I think he'll start a bit faster, which I'm sure he regrets not doing against Vargas. And I think he'll gradually grind him down. I think we'll see a dramatic finish, just like in Ford against Kolmotov, just not in the way that Ray would like this time around. And then moving up the card, at least in terms of weight, next up is a mouth-watering fight between two unbeaten contenders, I guess we have to say now, that doubles up as a final eliminator as well for the WBC middleweight title between Hamza Shiraz, who crucially is Frank Warren's captain in this event. So if he wins, he will get double points. But Ammo Williams, who Rahim was talking about just now, he'll be hoping to deny Hamza Shiraz and come away with 1 or 2 points for his man, Eddie Hearn. Rahim, first of all, from you, what do you make of this? You've got two kind of piping hot contenders from either side of the pond.
This is going to be a firefight. Like, I think both of these guys kind of the opposite of what I'm expecting to be the difference in the win for the last fight, and that they both have big knockout power. They both come with the confidence that they're going to be able to best their opponent, maybe put him to sleep. But I think it's a matter of letting your hands go. Like, I don't think this is going to be a particularly a necessity for these guys to think differently or be smarter than normal. I think they're both so talented. They both have such big punches that this is going to be just a firefight. Let your hands go. Follow your instincts. And the technique side of it is going to come naturally to both. They're not going to have to think about it or worry about making those kind of adjustments. They're just going to have to see whose talent, whose grit, whose real power prevails on the night. So I think this is one of those one-punch fights. Whichever lands the first, cleanest, hardest shot might be the one going away with the victory.
Well, I'm going to step up first on this one. I've been very impressed with Hamza Shiraz, although I would say this is a bigger step up for him, in my view, than it is for Ammo Williams. I think it's quite a distance from whoever you would think is Hamza Shiraz's best opponent so far, a faded version of Liam Williams, perhaps. We know Bradley Skeet gave him the most trouble, although that was back down at 154. And Hamza looks a different animal since he stepped up in weight. But Amo Williams is a very good all-round fighter. He's got enough power, skill, stamina, strength. There's a bit of everything there. It's going to be an incredibly tough test. And I think Rahim's right. I think whoever lands first and hardest is likely to come out on top. And I think Hamza has got that height and reach advantage. He's got the leverage behind his punches. And I think that could prove crucial. He's quite a disciplined fighter in recent times as well. I don't think he'll get discouraged if he loses some of the early rounds. I think he'll have faith in his ability to connect and his power to get the job finished as well. So I'm going to go for Hamza Shiraz to probably come out as a stoppage winner. I could see it going the distance, but they both hit so hard, it just seems against the odds that that will happen. So I'll go for Shiraz, which is a whopping, 4 points for Frank Warren because he is the captain, so it doubles up. Ayman, what are you saying?
Man, I mean, I have flip-flopped on this fight, and I would like to see what Friday brings for both fighters as well too. I think this is a real test of temperament as well for those moments, those big moments in the fight. I know that Hamza Shiraz reached in a couple of fights beforehand. He had a moment where he's really capitalized, had a knockdown, went to go finish the job, and then got knocked down himself. And if a better fighter might have been in there in the ring with him, he might have found himself on the end of a loss. He was looking at the end of a loss until he turned things around against Bradley Skeet. I know that there was a contention and controversy in that fight, but I feel that Hamza Shiraz was probably on the way towards a victory anyways. But yeah, Williams as well too had his problems in and outside the ring as well. Most infamously spent time away from the ring, and he'll have to make sure that he keeps himself focused on his opponent if he gets the opportunity there to finish the show as well. Right now, just to make the prediction here, I actually think this is going to go the way of Amo Williams. So I think Amo Williams might win here, maybe a contentious points victory in a real exciting fight. But right now, for me, it's Amo Williams.
Wow, Ayman and I have had two predictions and disagreed on both. So we'll see if this is a sign of things to come. It's a bit worrying as well that mine have gone on the side of Frank Warren and Ayman's on Eddie Hearn, because it kind of goes along party lines, especially in my case. It does make it look like everyone's right about my bias towards Warren, but we are biased out here at Seconds Out. I don't know if you've heard that before, but we are, I promise. Radio Rahim's actually not just Radio Rahim. Everyone's been kicked out of the theatre where they were conducting the interviews. So we've lost him probably for good this time, although I said that last time. He immediately came back. But yeah, so we'll try and set the scene going forward. But let's just go to some of the chat before we get back to our predictions. David MC says Zhang KO Wilder in 3. Dash Chef Anthony, Wilder KO Zhang within 4. So diametric opposites there. I think everyone's pinned up for Bricktop, says Sam Humphreys. Sam Humphreys also says, definitely the great Raymondo beats Ballbag. Sam, you are a wit of our time. Oscar Wilde would be, jealous if he could see you from heaven. Where else? Pay Styles, Usyk should retire, karma for Vlad. So we get onto some Fury Usyk chat there. So let's go back to the card. You've got the next one, which is, in some ways, I was surprised because I looked at the odds today for the 5 versus 5 generally, and I thought that Craig Richards would be the biggest favourite out of the whole 5 versus 5. He's not. In fact, Zhilei Zhang is a bigger favourite than Craig Richards, which really surprised me, given that equaliser that Deontay Wilder has, but we'll talk about that fight in due course. It is Craig Richards representing Matchroom up against Willie Hutchinson for Queensberry. And I'll explain how I see this, and you'll know because you'll see why I got to the conclusion I did. Craig Richards is someone who's beaten some good people domestically and really given hard fights to some of the top light heavyweights in the world. He's been a light heavyweight for a long time now. It's well remembered, I think, in UK circles. He stepped up at short notice, exceptionally short notice, to challenge Frank Buglioni for the British light heavyweight title way back in the day, and then stayed at that weight. He was a former super middleweight, Spider Richards. And he's pushed the likes of Joshua Buatsi to a very close fight, and Dimitri Bivol, of course, who's also on the card. So he's got that great experience. He's been at the weight for longer, and he's a really quality all-round fighter, probably around his prime as well. And then you've got Willie Hutchinson, who was a bit of a surprise when he was named at Frank Warren's light heavyweight rep. He hasn't been a light heavyweight for that long. He hasn't fought particularly great opposition. He was the only really decent test he's had was against Lennox Clark, back down at super middleweight, in which he got stopped, and it's his only defeat. Since then, he's been brought back against people he's widely been expected to beat. Really, really good amateur, Willie Hutchinson, particularly in the juniors. As is often the case with Frank Warren, he will sign them up as star juniors before they get a chance to go to many international competitions as a senior, because then the price obviously goes way up. And it helps them adapt to the professional style earlier on as well. Willie Hutchinson will certainly be determined. He's had a few different trainers now. He's never really settled until recently. And I just think stepping up the weight not that long ago, going up against someone like Craig Richards. I mean, we talked earlier about who it's a bigger step up for with Shiraz and Ammo Williams. This is an incredibly big step up for Willie Hutchinson. And not, in fact, it's a step down for Craig Richards from some of the company he's been mixing in. You know, if Richards does come through and, you know, I'm picking him to win this, I think on points, I'm not even sure it'd be his best win of his career. So I think that kind of, to me, it seems like a no-brainer. And I mean that with all due respect to Willie Hutchinson, but yeah, I can't see a winner apart from Richards. I don't think he'll stop him. He's got quite a methodical style. And I think despite what happened against Lennox Clark, where weight played a factor, I think Willie Hutchinson is a pretty tough game kid as well. But yeah, for me, Richards and by a clear decision.
Danny, yeah, I mean, I agree along the lines of your thinking. Willie, for me, he's had a decent enough bounce back, although he hasn't fought, you know, many real tests since. The one being Moderna, who he kind of stopped the flow of Carol Atoma, brother of Moses Atoma, didn't he? It was a bit of a step too soon for Carol, but it wasn't for Willie. And that's sort of a sign that, you know, Willie's back on the right path. But I think this is, like you're saying, just that step too far. I think this might be a fight where Willie actually is probably winning on the scorecards, but Craig Richards is dangerous throughout however many rounds he's contesting in for. There might be a little bit of an opportunity here to strike whilst there's change in the Craig Richards camp as he moves from it's Peter Sims, isn't it, rather than Tony, to Shane McGuigan. And whilst he's in transition, maybe there's an opportunity for Willie Hutchinson to expose some of the flaws whilst he's trying to ground himself in the McGuigan gym style. Although, you know, that's not a specific style set. It's more, you know, looking to hone what he has as a fighter. But I actually think Craig Richards is a bit too long in the tooth. Shane McGuigan is a bit too long in the tooth as well to allow that to happen. And I think actually that Willie might be on the end of a TKO here late in the fight with Craig Richards getting the victory.
Wow. So that's another 2 points for Hearn on Ayman's card. Hearn streaking ahead. Warren's obviously miles ahead on mine, but I think people could have written that scorecard before we even started talking. Sam Humphrey says, I think Flex boiled Hutchinson down in that loss, didn't he? I mean, I had nothing to do with it, but I think there was some weight issues that Hutchinson was suffering there. Pay Style says, Wilder won't play with Zhang's power. Wilder won't play with Zhang. Power respects power. Thanks, Pay Styles. Punctuation is your friend, I should point out. Thunder Road asks, when will we make Take Aims a chat moderator on this channel? Mate, I don't even know if I'm a chat moderator on the channel. I'm not sure how it's done. If anyone knows, please let us know. Ayman can definitely deal with you, Rabble. I'm happy to take a backstage. But yeah, so let's go to the next one. So far, just so people can stick to it, Ayman's got Eddie Hearn's team with 4 points and Frank Warren still on 0 at the moment. It looks like a mountain to climb for Queensbury. I've got Warren on 6 points, largely thanks to the double points for Hamza Shiraz, who I've predicted to get a stoppage win over Ammo Williams. And only 1 point for Hearn, which was just provided just now in this fantasy realm by Craig Spider Richards. First time he's appeared in any of my fantasies, I should point out. So now that leaves us with the 2 big heavyweight clashes. And, you know, a lot of people have complained that Deontay Wilder's not really a matchroom fighter, and I understand that. We're going to leave that one till last anyway. This is another one that I think is relatively easy to predict, although, you know, happy to have egg on my face after Saturday night is all said and done. And that is the probable fight for an IBF interim title / final eliminator / maybe the real title, although Frank Warren doesn't seem to think so, between the IBF number 1, Filip Hrgovic, and Britain's own Daniel Dubois. And if anyone is kind of a standard bearer for the good work that Frank Warren has done in getting his fighters into good positions, even after they've lost, it surely is Daniel Dubois. Ayman, how do you weigh this fight up?
This is a real difficult fight, and it depends on which side of the coin, especially with some of the conversations I've had with people, because when it comes to talking about Filip Hrgovic, there's so many people have asked questions about fights that he's been in, and depending on who you speak to, he's either a manufactured, well-maneuvered heavyweight who isn't a top-level heavyweight but has found himself in a good position, or he's a real danger man who's been avoided, and other people want to see other fighters take him on before they get in the ring with him. It depends what side of the coin you look at it, and I don't really know where Hrgovic is. I've seen Hrgovic with my own eyes when I went to watch Usyk versus Joshua 2 against Zhilei Zhang, and for me, I thought he was beat by Zhilei Zhang, who is now to be found, although he's had a good bit of momentum, has been beaten by Joe Parker. It sort of kind of puts everyone to a level to a degree. Now, in that fight as well, you've got to caveat it slightly that Hrgovic maybe shouldn't have been in the ring on the night because his father died weeks beforehand, and that does affect fighters. See Anti-Yard versus Lyndon Arthur and the way that the return fight happened. But then again, you got Daniel Dubois as well too, who look, for a lot of people and for myself, he's removed a lot of the question marks surrounding him. There are still some surrounding him, and I think Filip Hrgovic will and add more question marks to him as to the level that he's at. And you've got to add into the mix as well this sparring story. Now, we hear a lot of whispers about sparring stories. We hear a lot of whispers about the truth of them, but this one seems to be real in that Filip Hrgovic and Daniel Dubois sparred many years back. This is when Dubois was 17, keep in mind. And it seems like Hrgovic got the top side of that spar, and the top side meant that Daniel Dubois was on the canvas and he was sent to hospital. Now, for a fighter like Daniel Dubois, who I guess maybe doesn't really fully have the confidence there just yet, might that creep into his mind if the going gets tough? What will he do when the going gets tough? He's rose to the occasion recently against Jarrell Miller. Jarrell Miller isn't what Filip Hrgovic is. He has different assets. He's proven himself further than Jarrell Miller has. And I just wonder what those moments might mean for Daniel Dubois. For right now, I'm going to back Daniel Dubois to rise to the occasion, but it's not a solid pick here. But I think Daniel Dubois' power, I think Daniel Dubois' youth and athleticism will see him through the fight in moments as well where he might actually have to climb up off the canvas to deliver his big punches. But Hrgovic can as easily win this fight by knockout just as much as Daniel Dubois can. But for me, the decision, or my prediction, will be that Daniel Dubois does come through it with a KO.
Wow. So that's Warren off the mark on Ayman Khan's card. God, that's not easy to say. Yeah, very, very interesting one there. I mean, I'm going to go obviously in completely opposite direction because Ayman and I haven't agreed at all on any of these predictions so far. But I'm not just doing it to be churlish or contrary, but yeah, I mean, I find it very hard to see. I think this could be something of a coming out party for Filip Hrgovic. I think in the defeat to, not the defeat, in the fight with Zhilei Zhang, which many people thought he should have lost, so I'm among them. I felt he faded alarmingly at times and seemed distracted. And we found out, obviously, he was still dealing with issues surrounding the passing of his father, which I think would be difficult for anyone. But Zhang's obviously came on since and showed himself to be a talented, dangerous operator. But Hrgovic is a really good all-round fighter. He was a top amateur as a senior, which Dubois wasn't. He was a top junior. And again, as we talked about that Frank Warren model, he turned over quite young still. And I just think Hrgovic all-round is a far superior, I'd have to say, fighter than Daniel Dubois, especially because he's far more experienced, both as an amateur and a pro. I think he's developed those skills over a long period. Apparently, he's been looking really good out in Houston, sparring under the tutelage of Ronnie Shields. And Dubois, like it or not, and this will probably follow him around for the rest of his career, there are question marks around the mindset. I would never say a boxer's got, worries or concerns about his guts or his heart and all that sort of stuff, because I think you have to have a tremendous amount of heart to even get in there at any sort of level. But I think there is a mindset question because of the way he responded to resilience against not just Joe Joyce when his orbital bone was broken, of course, but in some of his other fights as well. There was he showed a certain amount of mettle against Jarrell Miller. That was heartening to see. But there's been the fight with Kevin Lorena, of course. There were some issues there. And if you look through his career, there's been some issues. Once he started fighting people that hit back and offered him some problems, I think he struggled. And those question marks are always going to be there. Whereas Hrgovic can say he's been up against adversity. He's had his mental struggles in the ring. But against Zhang, whether he should have got the decision or not, he certainly pushed him close. Never looked close to getting stopped either. He's very solid Hrgovic. He's not always the most dynamic. He's not always the most exciting to watch, but he's exceptionally solid and robust for a heavyweight, and he does everything well, if nothing spectacularly. And I fancy him to get the job done. It depends if Dubois kind of gets disheartened or even gasses out in the second half of the fight. It's always hard to pick a decision in a heavyweight fight, but I think I probably will go for Hrgovic to win on points in this one, which gives another point to Eddie Hearn. He starts to claw back that gap on my scorecard against Frank Warren. But I've still got Warren in a healthy lead going into the final fight we're going to talk about, although his captain is, of course, involved. And we'll get to that in a sec, but let me have a look at the chat. Sam Humphrey says, if you listen to sparring stories, Martin Bakole is the greatest fighter of all time. Well, it depends who's telling those sparring stories, Sam Humphreys. If it's Billy Nelson, then yeah, sure. iBoxing Hub says, we're live most days on our channel. Would be great to see you get involved, bro. Which bro? Bro me or bro Ayman? Let us know, bro. We're cool to do it. Take Ames. Ayman, look at Ayman multitasking. This is a real hard fight for me to pick. Well, there you go. Triple D versus Anderson in a hype eliminator match, says Pace Styles. Tech Test. Oh, maybe it was Tech Test that was being asked. He says, I'm a huge Dubois fan, so I pray he wins, but Hrgovic is a better boxer, so I'm going Hrgovic on a close points decision. I've got to say, Tech Test, you've mangled the spelling of Hrgovic's name there, but I've got to agree with you. Hrgovic close points decision is basically what I had. Thunder Road is saying he's just subscribed to iBoxing Hub's channel. He's a good guy, Thunder Road. He'll get those likes up. Jackie Boy Johnson says Hrgovic is the common sense pick. I mean, I am known for my common sense, Jackie Boy. DB Cooper One's finally joined us. He's just realised it's 4 o'clock as well. Afternoon, chaps. Just grow that beard back, Ayman, mate. Don't rule out Dubois. He's got a yellow Porsche and a Brazilian bird. DB Cooper One's like a throwback from the 70s, isn't he? You know, you got your Brazilian bird. Bit of an Alan Partridge, maybe. Thunder Road says, can Filip take Daniel into deep waters? If he does, Dubois will revert to type and take a knee. I mean, Thunder Road, that's the one thing you don't want to do in deep waters. From my water safety training that I've had, you don't want to take a knee. What else? Billy Nelson makes Bob Arum look sane, says DB Cooper One. I think you're kind of pushing it a little bit there, mate. We all watched Bob Arum at the weekend, but we're going to talk about that in the last segment of the show. All right, so back to the predictions, and there's one left. The fight that a lot of people are most intrigued by, I think it's fair to say, and that's Deontay Wilder trying to come back from that awful, laborious performance against Joseph Parker that saw him get a well-deserved defeat against someone else who's lost to Joseph Parker, albeit in very different fashion in Zhilei Zhang. Dropped Parker twice, but then, as has become a bit of a worrying pattern with the Chinese heavyweight, gassed, you know, conditioning dropped, work rate dropped in the second half of a fight for at least the third time, maybe more. And Joe Joyce must be ruining the fact that he could never get beyond round 6 against Zhilei Zhang, because maybe that would have turned things around. But that's the history. Let's talk about the immediate future. Ayman, I'm going to let you go first on this one, as it is the last one. What do you make of Zhang against Wilder, and who's the one that's going to arrest their poor recent fortunes?
Yeah, look, it's a real good fight, one which Joe Joyce might kick himself a little bit had he, you know, had things been a bit different, had things fallen his way a little bit more, you know, maybe handled Zhang a little bit better. He might have found himself in this position here. But that aside, look, I think it's a fight where, look, we one of these probably ends up retiring if they lose, given their age and given what's been maybe taken out of them a little bit here. Maybe less so with Zhang, but specifically with Wilder and what's not there anymore. For me, I think actually I'm actually backing Deontay Wilder to win and win by knockout. I think a lot of people kind of online who are picking Zhang kind of see Wilder as this, you know, faded fighter, which I get, and, you know, someone who can't pull the trigger anymore, which I get, and look at the outside stuff of him trying to find peace with things and the ayahuasca retreats and all that sort of stuff. I don't know too much about it, but I know it does a little bit to your mind and whatever. Putting that aside for a second, I think what isn't factored in by some who are picking Zhang is Wilder doesn't go down without a fight. He is a warrior. In his most high-profile moments, he does try to fight back. He doesn't go down easy. We didn't quite see it fully with Parker. He's citing inactivity for it. I'm hoping it's inactivity. I'm going to give him the benefit of doubt there. Plus, added into the fact that Zhang is just is a static target. He isn't as mobile as he used to be. And even then, he wasn't very mobile either, although he's grounded in good foundation and boxing skills and being able to move. Those feet have slowed down considerably, and his gas tank has slowed down considerably. And this is a fight where he has to gamble tactically. That in the last fight with Parker, he put on, he was heavier, nearing towards 300 pounds. But if he loses that weight, then he's going to lose the resistance as well for that right hand. So if he wants to move that little bit more, he's really got to, and he does come in a little bit lower in the weight, and he's really going to press on the gas in those first 4 or 5 rounds to get Wilder out of there. Otherwise, he's pretty much a sitting duck for that right hand. And in amongst those 4 rounds where he's gambling, he's got to watch out for that right hand because Wilder will be throwing it, because Wilder doesn't want to find himself on the canvas either. And I think that's going to pay dividends here. I think actually what's going to happen is when Zhang comes in forward looking to get that knockout, I think he'll walk onto one, and it'll be the beginning of the end for him. I think he'll get a referee will come in and stop the fight, as opposed to a KO specifically. I see it happening, but I think Wilder wins here and he stops Zhilei Zhang.
And that, as a total, is a whopping 8-2 victory for Eddie Hearn over Frank Warren in the 5v5. Quadruple the points for Eddie Hearn. I mean, Frank Warren's not going to like you next time he sees you, Ayman, I've got to say. But I'm sure if you're right, you'll be vindicated, and he'll have to accept your superior boxing knowledge. But we shall see. It will surprise absolutely no one. I'm going for Zhilei Zhang in this fight, which means I've got an 8-2 win as well for Frank Warren. So someone's going to be eating humble pie. Thankfully, I don't see Eddie Hearn that often, so he can't have too much of a go at me. Yeah, I mean, I see Wilder as still being very dangerous for as long as he's on his feet. But if he's anything like the Wilder we saw against Joseph Parker, he's a far diluted version of the scary predator that we knew before. I think Zhilei Zhang, once it gets past 6 or 7 rounds, will become a non-threat. So I think he'll have to get the job done by then. But I think Wilder only knows really one way to fight. He will be attacking. He will be open as he does so. I think Zhang is slightly more durable, if not over the long distance. I think he's probably got a slightly better chin. And although they've both won Olympic medals, I think it's fair to say that Zhang is the more technically adept and perhaps more versatile as well. And I think he might be able to shrug off some, if not all, of Wilder's shots in the early going and establish a bit of a foothold and perhaps force Wilder to crumble. I could be wrong. We shall see. But I do fancy him to get a stoppage in around 5 or 6 rounds over Deontay Wilder. And I do agree that whoever comes out on the wrong end of this fight should retire. Very similar to Joe Joyce and Derek Chisora, although I feel in that one they should probably both retire. But that's a story for another day. Let's just go back to the chat before we move on to the big man who's not on the card on Saturday night, but who will be keeping a close eye on it. Sam Humphrey said, I think the chat's going too fast for me. Not surprised, really, because I'm not very fast. Sam Humphrey says, I think this fight is going to be like the one in the sitcom Porridge where they both hit each other and get KO'd. Great deep cut there from Sam Humphreys. God rest Ronnie Barker's soul. Tech test. Zhang has 0 gas, so if Wilder can avoid him for 4 or 5 rounds, then Wilder can win a mid to late stoppage. iBoxing Hub. Zhang's gas tank is one of the biggest weaknesses for him. He can fight 12 rounds, but his output ends up becoming so low, like in the Parker fight. Exactly right. So he will need to get the job done by round 7, absolute latest. DB Cooper 1. I hope the big Zhang takes care of Kate Abdo's boyfriend's fighter with chopstick legs. That's a bit of a 6 degrees of separation type post. If it goes past 6, Wilder wins. Zhang's got a bang ASAP Rocky. Very nice. Pay style. Zhang has fast hands. Thanks. iBoxing Hub. Wilder's gas tank is great, to be honest. Is it? I don't know. He faded in was it the 3rd Fury fight? He faded quite significantly after some of the punishment he took. Nat says, this is the fight I'm looking forward to least. But if I had to back one of them, Zhang, but in brackets, maybe. So not willing to get off the fence, unfortunately, or not completely off the fence. Jackie Boy Johnson fancies Zhang to stop Wilder early. Thanks, Jackie Boy. I won't give you a cut of my winnings. Pay Styles. Wilder gas tank only went down when he put on weight. Yeah, it happens to us all, Pay Styles, unfortunately. Gary says, Ayman does prefer Eddie Hearn nowadays, and Danny is a loyal Warren soldier. Good opposites. Buy us out. Buy us out. Bullshit out. Brown nosing out. Seconds out. Come on. We've got to sell some of that merch one day. Don't ruin it. Lewis Hart's joined us live from Riyadh. Well, not live from Riyadh. Lewis isn't quite of the level of a Radio Rahim yet, so he doesn't get to actually come on the channel. And his paymasters might not like it either, let's be fair. But Lewis Hart of Boxing Social fame. I don't think we're going to get a massive load of people now switching to Boxing Social to follow that up. But you never know. Every little helps, Lewis. But thanks for watching. Leo Sullivan, looking forward to the boxing this Saturday coming. We all are, Lee. That's why we're here, but appreciate it. Thunder Road is saying to Ayman, you're on Ben Shalom's football team. And then he said you asked a stupid question during a post-match presser. Well, there you go. Ben Shalom obviously doesn't appreciate loyalty. That's all I can say. I've heard Ayman put in a great performance. Solid 7 out of 10, wasn't it?
Oh, literally, I just do that stuff for the exercise. Any chance to play football, then I'm there, really. And then he said, stupid great. Well, we all have our moments, don't we? Everything is a learning process. Maybe not the best time to ask certain questions, but I still stand by that specifically. And I spoke to Fraser Clark about that as well, too. Fraser was all right with it. It was just Ben Shalom who took umbrage to it. Did offer Ben Shalom the opportunity to arrest or have that conversation with me on the interview. Ben Shalom declined. Haven't interviewed Ben Shalom since, but that's his decision.
I'm sure that's entirely unrelated.
Yeah, he's very welcome to have an interview with me. I will, of course, have a conversation around that topic with him during our next interview. But yeah, just no bias there. Just was happy to have a run out on a football pitch.
And Lewis Hart goes on to say, take Ames out. Lewis is not my type, but you're more than welcome to try your luck. Thunder Road, Boxing Social is not the same without Rob Tebbett. Well, he's over on Boxing News, so if he's your cup of tea, there is another option. Lewis Hart, to absolutely no one's surprise, says, big up Ben Shalom. Yeah, we saw you on his private jet, mate. Not quite a private jet, let's be honest. Don't want to give Ben Shalom any illusions of grandeur there, but I'm sure he'll be watching, actually. Ben, hi. You're welcome on any time, mate, but you can't tell us what questions in advance. We don't do that here on Seconds Out. I'm not saying they do that anywhere else. I'm not saying that at all. So, yeah, that's our previews and predictions. Please do leave your own, both in the live chat or if you're watching on playback in the comments. Add it all up and let us know who you've got coming out on top. As we said earlier, we've got 8-2 either side. 8-2 for Warren's team for me and 8-2 for Hearn's for Ayman. And we've also still got the poll going, so you can vote who wins overall, Warren, Hearn, or a draw. Let us know, and we'll read out the poll results at the end of the show. But one major heavyweight who is always close to most boxing pundits' lips, but isn't on the show on Saturday night, well, I'm sure he'll be at ringside, is Anthony Joshua, former two-time world heavyweight champion, unified world heavyweight champion, of course. And he's lining up his own date with destiny for September at Wembley with the involvement of Turki Al-Sheikh, of course. And it's been kind of... Eddie Hearn gave a 6-person shortlist for AJ's opponent, but it seems almost certain now, from what we've heard from various sources, that Joshua is most likely to take on the winner of the Daniel Dubois fight with Filip Hrgovic. And as you've seen, if you watch the predictions just now, I've gone for Hrgovic, Ayman's gone for Dubois, Anthony Joshua waiting in the wings. Obviously, commercially, much bigger fight against Dubois if it's taking place at Wembley, as we suspect. But Hrgovic, I think, and Billy Nelson said this last night, would actually be a really tough test for AJ because of his style and the fact that he probably wouldn't be intimidated either. Ayman, do you think there's one of those two guys that suits Anthony Joshua better?
I think either of them end up being on the less favoured side against Anthony Joshua. Dubois for experience, although Dubois might draw from, I think Dubois was one of those people who, when he was turning pro, one of his big claims was he got the top side of, he had the top side of Anthony Joshua in a spar in the back, but Dubois obviously since come on a long way since that. But yeah, look, you'd want to see a UK versus UK type of thing going on if it was to be at Wembley. Filip Hrgovic doesn't, of course, being Croatian, doesn't represent that there, but it's all on apparent, who deserves it. That's kind of been the mantra over in Saudi of putting those big fights and putting even losing fighters, getting them more active and giving them those opportunities. But you'd much rather see Daniel Dubois in there than you would see Filip Hrgovic, but he's got to come through Filip Hrgovic. Where does Wilder fit in that equation as well too? Not so sure, because Wilder was seemingly in there as well if he comes through Zhilei Zhang. And Zhang as well, that's been a much mooted fight as well too. They were supposed to maybe do a fight over in China in the Bird's Nest. But that, it seems like that part of the equation has fallen to the wayside, especially with some other shortlisted fighters for Wilder to fight in the form of Jared Anderson being a fight that's been penciled in by Turki Al-Sheikh, who wants to see that fight happen as well. So it's all a little bit up in the air, but I don't think Anthony Joshua would find himself any more concerned for any of the fighters in the mix really right now on current form. Really depends what happens in their fight specifically. Maybe Wilder the most, because there's always been that rivalry and bit of back and forth, but we've seen them beat, barring Filip Hrgovic, although myself would attest to that. I think I have seen him beat against Zhilei Zhang. So none of these right now stand to be of a major concern for Anthony Joshua for that Wembley date, but you'd much rather see a Dubois or a Wilder in there.
Philly says the only fight I want to see after Fury and Usyk is Fury versus AJ, Battle of Britain. Tech Test says AJ is such a huge star that he can fight Postman Pat and he will still fill out Wembley Stadium. Pat for the KO. Dubois is not on AJ's level at all. Joshua will put him to sleep. Well, he's got to get past Hrgovic first. So if you don't think he's on much of a level, then he might not manage that. Cole Frosch has accepted to fight John the Headbutter Fury, says Philly. Oh, Philly, you were doing so well with your first post. Yeah, difficult second album syndrome there. Dash Chef Anthony says Wilder to win and then Wilder Parker too. Yeah, I mean, I feel a bit sorry for Joseph Parker because he's beaten two of the biggest danger men in the division, and then people are still talking about him fighting the likes of Wilder again or Caballel. And surely Parker's at a stage now where he deserves some sort of title shot. You got guys like Dubois and Hrgovic battling to either retain or take that number one position with the IBF. You've got a WBA eliminator coming up as well. I was looking at last night. Things are starting to move in terms of getting people in position for after the Fury-Usyk rematch takes place. And you'd like to see Parker at the head of at least one of those queues. DB Cooper one says, let's not get carried away. AJ couldn't sell out the O2 Arena twice last year. Yeah, but I think that everyone expected AJ to clearly win those fights. I think, him against Dubois, he will be a big favourite, but not as big. And I think if Dubois is coming off a big win over Hrgovic as well, it narrows that gap even more. So we shall see. Let's get on to our final talking point for this episode. It's already one of our longer editions, but we were gripped by an incredible rematch on Saturday night in Leeds as Jack Catterall beat Josh Taylor. Some will say again, but actually got the decision this time, although it seemed to me, at least, a much closer fight than the first one. Although I did have Catterall winning, but by a smaller margin than I felt he should have won the first fight. But either way, they both gave their all. They were both very respectful, both during and after the fight, a marked contrast to the build-up to both contests. And I know people talk about a trilogy. I'm not sure how keen Catterall is. His immediate post-fight comments, he said he's closed the chapter on Josh Taylor for now. But yeah, excellent fight. Ayman, what did you make of it?
Yeah, it was an excellent fight, a fight that delivered. I really enjoyed the drama of the first fight being there ringside, especially with how Catterall maybe wasn't as favoured going into the fight there. Taylor, for me, looked in good spirits. He looked like he'd done the weight as well as he could do, as the weight was a point of contention going into the first fight. It seemed like he'd done it right, talking to Joe McNally, coming out of camps and things, keeping himself at a good weight so he wasn't losing all the weight as well. And as well, factors of his foot injury and the minor surgery to his eye as well too didn't seem to curtail really Josh from getting the victory there. Those weren't used as excuses either from Josh, at least in any post-fight interviews and the interview he gave immediately after the fight to DAZN when it ended. So I think we saw probably the best form of Josh Taylor we're going to see. Is it the Josh Taylor of the past? No. But I also do think Josh Taylor of the past would have still struggled with Jack Catterall and his style. I just think it's a style that Josh can't quite get to grips with. I do feel he had successes in. I feel it was the right type of game plan to not really fall as much into Jack's punches as he did the first time round, but he still pressed Jack where Jack had to back foot a lot more, and he looked like he was tired or more tired than he was the first fight. So I think they game planned it as well as they could do. It's just the case that Jack was just a much better sharpshooter, and when Taylor was able to get success, Jack was able to just respond more with flurries of punches and really hurt Josh Taylor at points, and really, which we've never really seen before against real good fighters. So I just think it's a sign of where Taylor is going and where Catterall is going too. The controversial point afterwards, we thought we might go through the fight without any controversy, and then Bob Arum snatches the mic and gives his thoughts on how he thought the fight went. And actually, putting that aside for a second, that's indicative of Jack Catterall and his style as well too, for all of how good it is, I believe it to be. It's very key now who he fights next and where he fights next, because the American fight fans and American judges might not have the same appreciation for his style. So therefore, his style might mean that he won't get the credit he deserves on any card that goes to points. So if you're looking for those world titles, you're looking for the likes of Teofimo Lopez, looking for the likes of Ismael Barroso. Barroso might be the easier fight to go for. But you've still got to win those fights, and you've got to push more and show another gear, which Catterall hasn't done so far. And that might mean that he won't get the success he's looking for in the ring, even though for some, including myself, he should have been crowned undisputed champion, and that's now slipped away from his grasp. He's now got Eddie Hearn's got to now make sure he manufactures a good path to getting a world title, and it has to happen here in the UK as well if he's going to get that success. So I thought it was a well-deserved win for Jack Catterall against Josh Taylor, who might consider retirement now, probably still has a fight or two left in him if he moves up to welterweight and maybe looks to not quite cash out, but get those last couple of paydays. And Jack Catterall has to make sure that he gets the fights that he wants here, but over here in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the controversy there, and in this case, it didn't seem to be the wrong man won, perhaps, as a lot of people said for the first Taylor Catterall fight, but that the scorecards were, two of them at least, were too wide. I think they were, 117, 111 on two cards, and I think when they read those cards out first and said, well, these two judges agree on 117, 111, and Taylor immediately began shaking his head because it was obvious at that point that Catterall had got the verdict, and it wasn't a split decision either. I didn't think it was close enough to warrant being a split decision. I had no doubt who should have won the fight, and I think because of the previous controversy, I didn't expect Taylor to get any benefit of bad scoring again. But yeah, 117, 111 was on the wide side maybe of what was acceptable or even beyond it. But I had Catterall a pretty healthy winner by, I don't know, 3 or 4 points. But I could understand others that had it 7-5 in his favour, so by 2 points, 115, 113, but certainly no closer than that. I think Catterall dominated the first kind of 4 to 6 rounds. Taylor came back strong, but even in that part, they were quite competitive rounds. They were the harder ones to score were in the second half of the fight. So you could make a case that Catterall won his rounds clear, whereas Taylor won most of his rounds. He edged them. But even then, I felt like there was only really one winner. It just wasn't as clear as the first fight. So I think people just like controversy sometimes, I think. And I'm not sure what Bob Arum was thinking, because I'm sure that he's been on the wrong end of some worse disputed or questionable decisions than that in his 150-year career or whatever it is at this point. And I think the people around him, I know it must be hard to stop such a force of nature, but I think the people around him maybe should have put an arm around the shoulder and said, look, Bob, it's not worth dying on this hill, mate. But yeah, I mean, what made me laugh was when he said, I'm not going to bring another American over here to face this judging. I mean, yeah, Taylor doesn't consider himself English, and rightly so, but he's a proud Scot. He's certainly not from the other side of the Atlantic. But yeah, Bob, please do let your fighters come over. I'm sure they won't be treated terribly, and I don't think the decision was that bad. And maybe cooler heads have prevailed once Bob got back to the States and used his medicinal aids that he sometimes uses, and maybe he's a lot calmer now. We can only hope. But yeah, huge amount of respect for Bob Arum, but I didn't see any issue with the scoring particularly. Maybe a bit wide, but no more than that. Tech Test says Catterall Taylor was a great fight, but Catterall deserves a world title fight, so he should move on and go and fight for one. Josh Taylor showed that he still got it. He did well, but Catterall won it. I think there's a difference between still got it and still as good as he was. Because I think Josh Taylor, excuse me, still a very good fighter. May now move up to 147, I don't know. And he'll still give a lot of people trouble. Like if he was going in against a Barroso, for example, I'd give him a really good chance of winning a world title again at 140. The version that we saw on Saturday night. But I don't think you can compare the current version of Taylor with the one that stormed to undisputed glory and WBSS victory. I don't think he's as fluid. I don't think he's quite as quick and sharp. And I don't think he carries quite the same power. And, you know, trying to make a weight that's not easy to make for as long as he has, both as an amateur and then as a pro, it can't be easy. And he's had periods where he's had a long time out of the ring as well, whether through injuries or just general inactivity. And that doesn't help either as you're getting older. And I don't think we'll ever see that version of Taylor again. And I think that's just a natural part of the aging process and how long he's been in the sport. So we'll wait and see. But I think he's still got a lot to offer. I just don't think he'll ever be that version, that British pound-for-pound number one, I think he was at the time, in my view. And I don't think we'll see that again necessarily. Nat says, Catterall definitely won, but I do think it was closer than the scorecards. Though I might have been somewhat swayed by the additional commentary I was getting from the friend I watched it with. Oh, I hate it when people do that. Just like yabbering on in your ear, trying to act like they know about boxing, especially when you watch it in a pub. It's just fucking infuriating. Dash Chef Anthony, Taylor knows he's lost and was fair with his comments before Bob said his piece. Yeah, I think that's fair enough. But then I think Taylor also maybe had one eye on a trilogy fight and probably didn't want to say too much. Dash Chef Anthony says, or after he woke up after his nap, bless him, what a legend. DB Cooper 1, agree with Ayman. Still spelling his name wrong, though, DB Cooper 1. Don't think he beats Teo Lopez, especially not with American refs with that style. Dare I say John Lewis ref was right. He does throw away fights. Yeah, I heard about Ian John Lewis's appearance. It was you that told me, wasn't it, Ayman?
Yeah.
Yeah, on the George Groves podcast. So I need to listen to that and see exactly what he's got to say. Who else have we got? No, we're not reading that one. DB Cooper 1. You've gone too far now into surreal. Dash Chef Anthony, appreciate the quality content from SO. Woo! Always on point. Appreciate you and your guest. Stay blessed, no stress. I always stay blessed. I can't promise on the no stress. Right, before we wrap up for this week, we did put out a poll at the start of the show on the 5v5 Hearn versus Warren, big event in Riyadh on Saturday night. Who wins, Hearn, Warren, or will it be a draw? And Modfather Vinny, if you can hear me, what were the results of the poll? It'd be nice if it just went ping and came up on screen. But I'm not sure that's ever going to happen. Vinny, where are you? Vinny, come on.
I've got it here, Danny. So it's Hearn 63%, Warren 28%, and a draw 7%.
And I took that personally.
Yeah, so Hearn taking a really big lead on the percentage poll votes for the 5 versus 5 from the Seconds Out viewers and listeners.
Wow. And I just got a notification about a sale this weekend at Papa John's Pizza. So I can't help but feel the two are connected. I'm going to have to be eating my feelings on Saturday night when Eddie Hearn's team romps the victory. But we shall see. I want to thank you all for joining us. Anyone who is watching on playback, you might have missed out on the charm, shall we say, of the live chat. However, you can still comment and we will respond to some of those. But as is customary, before we go for another week, I'd like to turn to Mr. Ayman Khan for his closing remarks.
Yeah, some absolute real swing fights on that card. I'll be changing my mind on, I'm sure, throughout the week, multiple times on Dubois versus Hrgovic and Shiraz versus Williams. But I've given you my thoughts here this week. Make sure you continue to give your thoughts in the comments as well below. We do get to do that, as well as click the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, share. Also listen to the podcast on Spotify as well too. Please do be sure to rate it as well if you do choose to listen on Spotify. Great to see you guys in here as well, following off of the back of Fury versus Usyk, and now Jack Catterall winning against Josh Taylor in repeat versus revenge. We've got all the action. We've got Rahim. You heard him here earlier in the podcast on Seconds Out Live, giving you the information of the goings on during the 5v5, and we'll keep doing that as well too, with us here assisting throughout the rest of the fight week on Seconds Out. So make sure you keep tuned to Seconds Out for all the latest information and boxing content coming your way. But for now, myself, Danny, and Vinny will see you guys on the next one. Thank you for joining.